Hello, everybody. My name is Melody Kaiser. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Education for the Family's SCN2A Foundation, and I'm here today to talk to you about our upcoming externally led patient-focused drug development meeting. Just a quick notice, this meeting is going to be recorded and will be shared on a public website, including the family's SCN2A website, which is www.scn2a.org, and will also be posted on our YouTube channel. If you do not wish to be in a recorded meeting, you can leave now and watch the recording of this meeting later. If you have any questions after watching the recording, you can submit them to advocacy@scn2a.org. Just want to go over some quick meeting expectations. This is an informational meeting today hosted by the Families SCN2A Foundation. We've invited a global audience of families and advocacy leaders to attend. Just a reminder, participation in our meetings is optional, but respect is required. Please keep the following few things in mind. Public information from this meeting may be shared with permission, so please just reach out. Personal information, especially something that's shared by a family, is private and may not be shared. There's no soliciting or contacting participants from this meeting. Please mute yourself when you're not talking. Raise your hand or put questions into the chat. And as always, pets and children are welcome on our calls. I'm going to turn this slide over to our summer intern, William.
Hi, I'm William Crumlett. I am a student at the University of Notre Dame who has a minor in science and patient advocacy and had the pleasure of being paired up with Family SCN2A Foundation for a 10-week summer internship. We're about halfway through that now, and I've been put in charge of handling the Mentimeter, which we'll be using in our upcoming EL-PFDD meeting. So we're going to be sampling it throughout this presentation. If you scan this QR code or any of the QR codes on the following Mentimeter slide questions, you should be directed to an application where you can fill out your answers. This is a test run for us, and this is how the PFDD is going to be ran. So if there's a couple of kinks or some problems with it, we want to get it worked out now. So
Thank you so much for your patience. Yes, as William's mentioning, there's a lot of details that go into planning a PFDD meeting, and we're just going to keep practicing and practicing and practicing it so on the day that it's perfect. So for those of you who've never used a QR code before, you can actually just pick up your phone, put the camera on, and hold it up to the box until you get your link. And if you click it, it should open up right on your phone. You can also you can go to menti.com. menti.com, and you can enter the poll number, which is 83846225. And that should also get you to jump right into the polling software. And so every time you see a Mentimeter poll, go ahead and pull up your phone. If you keep it open, or if you're using it in another tab on your computer, the slides should advance. So that's fingers crossed, the slides should advance for you and you won't have to keep clicking on it. And here, fingers crossed it's loading correctly. There we go. Okay, so we're just starting off with a sample question. William, do you wanna lead this one?
yeah, so we wanted to have some fun questions, not something too serious to lead off our Mentimeter polling. So right now we're asking how many trees does it take to make a ton of paper, ranging from 1 to 75. So we're narrowing it down for you guys.
And with this one, if you're showing it on your phone, oh, it's not going to show me with the phone. If you're showing it on your phone, you just grab the little dot and drag it to your answer. So this is one of the ways that we can use polling for our EL-PFDD meeting. So I'm going to guess and submit my guess, and hopefully it'll pop up right live time on the slide as we're putting in our responses. We'll just give everybody a moment to answer. All right. Well, William, I see we have the option to show the correct answer. So is that
Yep,
something we're going to reveal?
I'll display it now. If you're on the app, you should be able to see the correct answer. And then if you click on the slideshow, you should be able to see. But the correct answer is actually 24. I was surprised to find that out too.
I was way off. Oh
I don't
no.
really know how they're gauging tree size, but apparently the average tree, it's 24 trees to make a ton of paper.
Who knew? Well, thanks for the fun start, William. I appreciate you getting creative with very little direction. We said, make a fun slide, William, and you came up with a really cute one, so thank you. Okay. Here's one that I really love. This is a map. So you should be able to scan this one and drop a dot as close as you can. It's a little hard depending on the size of your device, but we want to know where you're calling from. And so if you could roughly put your dot around where you are, at least maybe on the right country or at least the right continent, that would be great. Um, we've invited our international partners to join this call as always, and so it's just really nice to see where our families are calling in from and our partners. This meeting is that we're talking about is a United States FDA meeting, but the voice that we're presenting is global. Oh, fun to see where everybody's calling in from. Oh, somebody looks like they're in the water. Oh, fun. All right. We're just waiting for one more respondent. Says 9 of 10.
Rachel's in the ocean. Rachel, that's exactly where we all should be.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for participating. Okay, here's what you came for. You came to learn a little bit about the EL-PFDD meeting, and you're going to hear me use the phrase EL and PFDD interchangeably, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But first, I just want to start from the very basics. What is the FDA, and why do we have a meeting with them? So the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, is a government regulatory agency that has many roles in protecting public health. Their role in the drug development process includes guidance to pharmaceutical and industry, review, approval, and safety monitoring of drugs and medicines, biologics, including gene therapies, medical devices, and other things. And you can check out on the QR code right here some of the things that FDA does regulate that you may not realize they're helping with. Which brings us to our next poll. Which of these FDA regulated products have you or your family used? And I'm going to answer this one too. Amazing. So you can imagine in other situations, there might be a little, you'll see the bars going higher and lower. But this one, it looks like we're all users of many products that and devices that the FDA regulates. They want to hear about lots of experiences, and that's the part of our role in sharing. So what is a PFDD meeting? PFDD stands for Patient-Focused Drug Development, and a PFDD meeting is an opportunity for a patient community to formally engage with the FDA and share important information about what it's like to live with their condition. It's going to be a town hall style meeting, and we're following their exact template. We don't have any wiggle room in how we present the meeting because they tell us exactly how they want it. But the town hall meeting addresses important topics for the FDA, including the most significant symptoms of a condition and the impact of that condition on daily life, and current approaches and future preferences for treatment, including risk tolerance um, for new drugs or clinical trials. So what is an EL-PFDD meeting? We talked about what a PFDD meeting is. What's an EL-PFDD meeting? So the EL stands for externally led, and that means a group outside of the FDA, like Families SCN2A Foundation, hosts and sponsors the meeting. The FDA also does host a limited number of PFDD meetings, and there's one coming up this summer if you'd like to check it out. But the majority of them are externally led because there's many more groups that want the FDA's attention than the FDA could possibly ever organize themselves. And so they've outsourced the opportunity to advocacy groups like us to be able to represent the community. Patient-focused means that the main topic of the meeting is to get the patient and caregiver perspective on the condition. This is different from a scientific meeting or a clinically focused meeting. There's lots of different kinds of meetings that the FDA hosts, but a patient-focused drug development meeting is very focused on the lived experience. And then drug development describes the entire process of creating, testing, and approving new treatments like medications or gene therapies. So I've got this QR code here if you'd like to scan it. If you want to check out some other EL-PFDD meetings, there's some recordings and reports that you could check out just to get a sense of what the meeting is like. As we get closer to the meeting time, we're going to share really strong examples of clips of different meetings to show what we're trying to do, because each group does do it a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So let's pull up another polling question. Have you ever attended a PFDD or an EL-PFDD meeting before? If you already have your Mentimeter open, the next slide should automatically advance, but otherwise please scan the QR code to engage. Fantastic. Okay, so more no's than yeses, but a decent number of yeses. May I ask the groups if anybody feels comfortable sharing? Those of you who said yes, could you share maybe one or two that you've experienced and what you took from it? If anybody feels comfortable sharing. Leah, yeah, please.
I attended the EL-PFDD meeting for the LGS Foundation's one. It was several years ago, at least 5 years ago. It was in DC.
Wonderful. Anybody else?
I was at the same one.
Excellent.
Um,
Excellent.
I think it was pre-COVID, so it's probably more than 5 years ago now. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
But I was struck by the all the different family stories. And it was nice to have everyone in one room.
Amazing.
It was impactful.
Yeah. And you're coming to a point that I'm going to make about why we want to get everybody in the physical same room. Because it's incredibly impactful and it's empowering to be surrounded by your community as you're sharing this critical information. Anybody else? I know I'm one of the four, so I'll share mine later, but if there's anybody else who'd like to share. Okay. Well, I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and so I attend every single one that I can. If it's in person, I go because they're open to the public, and I watch all the recordings because this is something that is, important to me. I've seen tons of them, and they're all a little bit different. And so we're taking the best features that we love from different ones and tweaking it in the way that we can within the strict structure of the town hall agenda that's already preset by the FDA. Great. Okay, and so this one, this is straight from the FDA's website. Why does the FDA want PFDD meetings? PFDD meetings give FDA and other key stakeholders, including medical product developers, healthcare providers, federal partners, an important opportunity to hear directly from patients, their families, caregivers, and patient advocates about the symptoms that matter most to them, the impact the disease has on patients' daily life, and the patient's experience with currently available treatments. This input can inform FDA's decisions and oversight both during the drug development and during our review of marketing applications. So we're tapping in, as you know, the SCN2A treatment pipeline is varied from preclinical all the way to under review right now, and we're trying to make sure that we're giving them the information that they need for all steps of guidance and review of products that could potentially impact families with SCN2A related disorders. So why are we hosting? What's our goal? One, amplify the patient voice. We want to ensure that FDA and drug developers hear directly from our community about the symptoms that matter most and the daily impacts of SCN2A related disorders. We want to inform drug development. The input provided during this meeting can directly inform FDA decisions and oversight during the development and review of the new treatments. We want to help identify unmet needs. By discussing current treatment experiences and their downsides, we're hoping to help stakeholders understand what meaningful improvement looks like for our families. It's hard for drug developers or FDA to know what's important to families unless the families tell them. And we want to shape future research. We're going to help identify 1 to 3 symptoms each with the most significant impact. And that's going to help prioritize research and pick really strong clinical trial endpoints. So an endpoint in a clinical trial is what is used to determine whether the experimental treatment was successful. And so we want to tell them what success looks like for the SCN2A community. And that might be different than what it looks like to another community. That's why it's so personal. All right, let's see if the slide loads. Okay, now you have a chance to rank the things that are most important to you. So you're going to drag, if you can, on your phone or on your computer if you have, drag to rank from 1 to 4 what's most important for why you think the EL-PFDD is going to be important for your family. And I'm going to do these two while we're doing it. We'll do it together.
Hello, hello.
Hello? Hi, are you having any trouble with the Mentimeter? Can we help you? Okay, fantastic. And so as you're seeing these slides here with the different questions, during our meeting, we are going to have a handful of questions that the FDA wants to see, and everybody around the world is going to be able to participate in it at the same moment. And the slides in the room and the slides on the Zoom are going to update live time. And that's data collection for our Voice of the Patient report, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And it's also conversation for our speakers and participants in the room. All right. So let's talk about the actual meeting details first.
Uh,
Save the date.
hello,
Hello?
hello. Yeah, actually, I'm Muhammad from Egypt. I don't pressure for Mrs. Nisreen Muhammad and her daughter. As you can see, we had a little bit situation. Hello.
Hello? Yes, hi.
Yeah. I'm sorry, just I'm walking the street and I'm talking about the same time I'm attending this fine presentation as I see. But I can't consider me under pressure for Mrs. Nasreen from Egypt about her daughter, actually.
Well, would you mind
Uh,
writing it into the chat? I think that I would be able to it's hard to understand what you're saying.
okay. Just I'm just okay. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, the voice is not good, right? All right.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you.
Uh,
Okay. So save the date. Our meeting is scheduled for Friday, October 23rd, 2026. The live stream is going to begin at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's Washington, D.C. local time. And the meeting is going to conclude at approximately 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Because it is the federal government and because the fiscal year changes on October 1st, there is a chance that the federal government potentially could be caught up in another shutdown, as sometimes happens the beginning of the fiscal year. So we have already secured a backup date. FDA is holding Monday, March 1st, 2027 for us. Our venue is holding the date and our hotel block is holding the date. So hopefully we won't need it, but we always plan for contingencies, especially in DC. So rest assured that we've got this covered, and we would just ask that you have travel insurance on your travel, and we'll chat about those details later. But we're taking care of that. And I want to talk about, when I shared the link to the different other examples of PFDD meetings, you're going to see a variety of styles. Some of them are just virtual. Sometimes it looks like they're in a TV studio. Sometimes it looks like they're on a Zoom meeting. Some of them are just in person, and the recording looks like it's just in a conference hall. We're choosing to do a hybrid meeting, and the reason is we want to include as many families and international partners as possible, but without sacrificing the benefits of having FDA representatives meet real families in person. There's just no substitute for having those people in the room at the same time to really experience for just a day what it might be like to be in a meeting with a person with an SCN2A related disorder. There's only so much they can see on a Zoom meeting, and there's only so much they can imagine by reading. But by being in the room with the real families and the real individuals who are affected by SCN2A related disorders, they can really get a strong sense of what some of the challenges may be and what some of the needs might be. Um, Jenny, you had mentioned that you were in an in-person meeting. If I could call on you again, was there anything that you think that the FDA representatives in the room saw or experienced that they wouldn't have captured on a Zoom meeting?
Um, well, I think just the physical presence of all the people and the emotions, honestly, of the people watching as much as the people presenting. A lot of families got up and told their stories, which, I'm sure you could have seen on Zoom, although I don't think anybody knew what Zoom was then.
Right.
But it's not the same as seeing the reactions of the audience for one thing. And it's yeah, it's very emotional. So
That's
that
a
you can
really
feel
great
that in a room.
That's a really great point. And I'm really glad you brought that up because, when you're in a room and somebody's speaking and everybody's nodding or they're crying or they're giving the thumbs up like, yes, me too, or however they're signaling, that just amplifies everybody's voice. And I love that. One of the things that I've seen in an in-person meeting that just can't be visualized on Zoom is how long it takes a speaker with a mobility impairment to get to the stage. Right? How that's meaningful. How challenging it is in a room where you're trying to navigate to the stage and the tables are set up in a way that you can't navigate your mobility device or you can't easily get through. I was at a PFDD meeting where there was a young man who was vocalizing every 30 seconds or so, and that would have been not captured in the Zoom meeting. And everybody in the room, you acclimate to it, but it's not something that the FDA would have known about. And so it wasn't disturbing the meeting, but it was part of the whole picture of like, this is the lived experience.
Right.
There was the background noise of feeding machines and people getting up and taking care of kids in the middle of the meeting because they weren't able to sit still for that long. And it just the whole experience to be in the room was so impactful. Um, Unfortunately, it does make it a little bit more logistically challenging because we're both running a virtual meeting and we have an in-person meeting and we're trying to coordinate everything. So, it takes more resources, it takes more money, it takes more time, but we're committed to this being the model. And I hope that everybody finds it beneficial. I also think having the virtual option really helps families who just can't travel. We know that a lot of families with medically fragile children just can't travel. And certainly some of our international partners may not be able to get here, but we want you to fully participate. And so it's a nice option. And I hope that you'll all take advantage of whichever way you can join. And speaking of joining, we have a pre-registration interest form. We haven't opened up the full registration portal. We're still doing registration for the conference in July. But as soon as that's over, we'll switch over to registration for this meeting. But in the meantime, you can fill out this form and just give us just a little planning details. Do you think you might come in person to Washington, D.C.? Do you think you're going to take it hybrid or you're not sure yet? Do you think you might want to participate? And it's okay if you don't know the answers yet, because I haven't told you all the different roles yet, but you can fill out as best you can, and let us know how we can, reach out to you and hopefully have all of you engaging. So once again, this is a public meeting, and as I mentioned that it's open to everybody, but we are prioritizing registration, in-person registration for our families. So we want to make sure that the room is packed with as many true stakeholders in the meeting before we open up physical seats to the outside community. So we would love if our families could let us know how many seats we should potentially save. Um, and you can see here, if you go to that website, which you can scan, you can see that we're listed between some friends. And I actually wanted to point out that two of the other ones in the same, within a month of us, also have Notre Dame advocacy students. So William, do you want to talk a little bit about our collaboration with them?
Yeah. So recently, Notre Dame has opened up the Center for Rare Disease, and although individually rare diseases are, collectively they're actually very common. And I think through working with the two other groups, the FCF Foundation and then the Lipodystrophy United, we can compile resources to not only make our own presentations better and make the PFDD run maybe a little bit smoother, but also build that patient voice out a little bit more and lift each other up. So I think it's been great. There's definitely some ideas that they've presented that have opened our eyes and things that we're going to be including in our PFDD that we might not have previously. So
Yeah. It's always great to share resources and brainstorm with others. So it's been a really nice partnership. Okay. So just want to talk about who might actually attend this meeting. So again, first and foremost, it's people affected by SCN2A related disorders. I put in parentheses patients because that's what the FDA, the word that they use. I'm very people-centered, so I say people affected or people living with, but you're going to hear those terms interchangeably. Also the caregivers and family members of people affected with SCN2A related disorders. We're going to have FDA in person. Somewhere between probably 3 and 5 people may show up in the Washington, D.C. area. Many, many, many more will be attending virtually. But it's nice. We're doing everything we can to make it close enough and easy enough right off public transportation to make sure that everyone can attend if they want in person. There'll be other federal agency staff. We're really close to NIH and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services that, really have strong ties to the rare community and often will attend these meetings. There'll be some industry partners. Unlike the patient listening session where industry partners are not permitted, in this case, they're not only permitted, but they're allowed to help sponsor the meeting to, make sure that we have the funding to bring in as many people as possible. Researchers and scientists and doctors and other medical providers, other advocacy partners. As I said, I attend lots of PFDD meetings that I don't have a direct relationship to, as I think others do as well. Some healthcare economists who might help figure out, some of these treatments that are in our pipeline are quite expensive. And so they may want to hear about the priorities to help advise whether or not, the cost of these expensive treatments, would be meaningful to the community or accessible to the community. Just other friends, you're welcome to invite anybody that cares, your teachers, your friends, your grandparents, anybody. And then just random members of the public, because it is an FDA sponsored, or it's not, excuse me, it's an FDA style meeting and it's on the website. They are not sponsoring it. We are sponsoring it, but it is open to the public as a requirement of the meeting. All right, so here's another poll coming up. If you're just joining, I know a few people just came on a few minutes ago. If you haven't already done this, you can go ahead and scan that QR code, or you can go to menti.com and put in that number to answer the questions here as we're doing live polling. So everybody, what is your connection to the SCN2A community? You can select as many as apply to you. So there's many people on this call, including our major leadership that carry multiple roles. Fantastic. And I do want to point out, I see that we have no FDA representatives, and that's what we expected. We did ask them, we have monthly meetings with them. We asked them if they would like to join, and they just really made it clear that this is our meeting and this is our community prep. And so that they look forward to meeting you at our meeting, but they didn't want to influence our preparation meeting. So. All right. Any questions about anything I've shared so far before we talk about the prep? Please feel free to come off mute or raise your hand if you'd like to be called on. No, sorry, I can't see all the participants, so if anybody else from the foundation could let me know if there's anybody waiting. No, we're good? Okay, I'll keep going then. So let's talk about preparation. So it takes over a year to prepare for a PFDD meeting. First, we do lots of research and potentially work with consultants or experts. Thankfully, we have some internal expertise, including Christina, who did the LGS PFDD, and I've worked on several. We submitted a letter of intent with the FDA saying that we would like to host this meeting. And once they accepted our letter, we've been working with them monthly to help design the meeting and to make sure that we're living up to their expectations and that they understand what our priorities are. And I'll tell you an example of one of our priorities that changed their meeting agenda slightly. We're in the process now of selecting speakers to tell their stories. And we're also in the process of surveying the whole community on their lived experience. That will be ongoing until the very end. And then we're setting up polling and live streaming for the meeting. We've organized the event space and hotel blocks and all the travel, and securing live streaming and recording. So lots to prepare for the meeting. It's a one-day event, but it takes over a year. So as I mentioned, one of the things that we're doing right now is selecting and preparing panelists. A few of you have already reached out to me, and I've had lovely Zoom conversations with you, and I'm very grateful that you put your name in the hat, and we will absolutely be reaching out to everybody who's reached out to us as soon as we have a sense of how we're going to set up the panels. One of the goals that FDA has given us is to make sure that we have a really diverse set of speakers who represent the full spectrum of SCN2A related disorders, including the different phenotypes. So, our loss of function, our gain of function, mixed function, but also diversity in preferences. Some people have really high risk tolerance for clinical trials. They're the first one to raise their hand at an opportunity. Other people, maybe not so much. Maybe they want to wait for a drug to be FDA approved before they pursue that. Some people have had different experiences with currently available treatments or different clinical trials, and we want to share that. And then also, of course, varying outcomes. We want to be really inclusive of the whole spectrum, from those who are more mildly effective to those who have passed away. And so we really want to be respectful and inclusive of our bereaved families and make sure that their voices and their loved ones' voices are heard throughout the entire meeting. One of the ways that we're preparing right now is something called the Snorkel Study. Snorkel is based on the name. It was inspired by a service dog in the community, and the Snorkel Study stands for the acronym stands for SCN2A Narratives, Outcomes, Research, Knowledge, and Live Experience. We know that Snorkel is typically spelled EL, but we just really needed lived experience in there, so we're choosing to misspell it. But I hope you get the point that what we're really doing, and this is a qualitative study. We have lots of quantitative studies. This is a qualitative study, really getting to understand the lived experience and the priorities. And it's rolling out in a couple of different ways. The first part of it is actually on the family Facebook group. And so we're doing prompts, and families are choosing to engage or not, it's their choice, and answering some questions. So we started off with, some really fun ones, like, what superpower does your warrior have? And what fun activities do you do with your warrior? And then they're going to start to get a little bit more into the lived experience of, day to day that FDA is really going to be interested in learning about. For example, what does mealtime look like for your warrior? So I think that's one that's up right now or just ended. You can actually always go back and answer them, but we do a new prompt each week. The next stage after this, after the Facebook group, is to do some interviews at the conference. So stay tuned for signups for like one-on-one conversations with us. You can also do them over Zoom if you're not at the conference. And then based on the answers that we get from the Facebook prompts and from our interviews, we're going to be crafting a very tailored survey that will go out to the global community. All of this in advance of the meeting so that we know what we're presenting to the FDA and we know how to pick speakers that are fully representative of the experiences that you're sharing with us. Okay, any questions about prep? All right, let's talk about the actual meeting day, October 23rd. So this is a draft agenda. It's subject to change. And this was actually one of the first opportunities that we had on day one with FDA to tweak their model. Their typical model would start maybe a little bit earlier and maybe end a little bit earlier. And we said, you know what? It's hard to get out the door with families. A lot of times you can't have these bright and early meetings. You got to give people time to get their families ready and to eat and to feed their children and whatever. So we asked for a slightly later start time, and we also asked for an hour lunch. Usually the meeting agenda for if FDA is running it, it's only a half an hour lunch. Half an hour is not going to cut it. There's no way that our families are going to be able to, our caregivers are going to take care of themselves, and our children and loved ones are going to be able to be fed and cared for and go to the bathroom or be changed or whatever the care needs are. Half an hour is just not going to cut it. And so we advocated and were easily granted. They understood and appreciated us sharing that with them for the rationale. So that was step one. Um, Basically, the meeting goes. We'll start with some opening remarks. As the meeting host, Families SCN2A will introduce the meeting. We also have an FDA speaker who will present a little bit about the value of the meeting. We'll have a clinical overview, and then we're going to have our first panel of speakers. They're going to share a little bit about their stories with the idea of focusing on health effects and daily impacts. So, like what is it like to live? What's the day-to-day impact on your life, or what does it look like a day in your life? Then again, we'll take an hour for break for lunch, and then the next part of the day talks more about current approaches to treatment and also what an ideal future treatment might look like. You know, short of a cure, what would be a reasonable and meaningful change in your child or in your loved one or in yourself that you might want FDA to know about? And then some closing remarks. And then after that, we're going to have a meeting together. It's going to be a very emotional meeting, and so we don't want people to just walk away. We're going to bring the community together to support each other and debrief and make sure that we're not leaving anybody out there after what's going to be a very emotional meeting, as Jenny had mentioned. So some opening speakers. We're going to have, again, I said FDA, then the clinician, and then we'll have some moderators who are really going to guide the conversation and keep the meeting moving on topic. We know that families have lots to say. This meeting has a very specific purpose, and so we're going to make sure that we open up lots of time for you to share your entire story with us, and then we'll help you figure out what's the most important part of your story that's appropriate for this meeting. But we're not going to forget the rest of it. We've got lots of other types of meetings and other ways to advocate for our families. And so, if you're sharing about something that's really off topic for this meeting, I'll help you figure out where the best place is to make sure that that part of your story is also told. But our moderators are going to keep everything on track and keep the meeting moving. Again, we're going to have some panelists. So we're looking for 4 to 5 people for each session. So it's probably a total of 10 volunteers to share their experience. First choice always would be if a person who has an SCN2A related disorder is able to speak for themselves and share their story. But we understand that in many cases, somebody else will be doing the speaking for them, and we'll just try to make sure that we're really true to their voice, even if somebody else has to say the words. And then we also have some comments. So our panelists will start with their opening comments, but then we're going to open it up to the community. And so they're really going to start the conversation and others will join in. So here's how you can join the conversation. Again, if you're in person, you can actually stand up at the microphones or we might have you sit down and we'll hand you a microphone, but there'll be an open mic period where you can actively answer questions that FDA has asked us to put out there. Everybody, whether you're virtual or in person, is answering the same Mentimeter poll. So just as you saw, everyone here on this call is virtual, and we all answered and updated the slides live time. People in the room can also do it, and the whole community is going to be able to engage at the same moment, which is really powerful. Our virtual participants are also encouraged to contribute their thoughts right into the question and answer, and they'll either come off mic to say them themselves, or our moderators will read them out loud, depending on connectivity and other issues. And then everybody's voice, no matter where you are, no matter how you join, no matter how you share information, everybody's voice and unique perspective can help shape this Voice of the Patient report, which is our final product that we're going to share with the FDA, and it becomes a reference guide for them. So the open comment period that's separate from the meeting, this is before and after the meeting. So you're actually going to see the slide twice. This is, we have an open comment period 30 days prior to the meeting and 30 days after the meeting. And it's going to be on our website, and it's going to be a tell us anything. It's going to be an open form, and anybody in the SCN2A community, families, caregivers, even clinicians, you can answer. Just let us know who you are so we can appropriately put it into the report. You'll be able to share your voice. So even if you can't attend the meeting, you'll still be able to contribute. Or if you did attend the meeting and afterwards you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to tell them this, or oh, I only had a minute at the mic and I started talking and I didn't get everything out that I wanted to say, you can say it afterwards. We'll capture it all. That allows people to have their voices heard. And this is a really important. The written comments submitted before or after carry the same weight in our Voice of the Patient report as those who speak verbally at the meeting. So everybody shares. We'll send out information. There'll be a link on our website, and then there'll also be lots of information the day of the meeting. So I just wanted to give an example of some of the discussion questions that FDA typically asks us to ask the community. So one of the questions about the health effects and daily impacts. Which 1 to 3 symptoms have the most significant impact on your life? And we're going to help you try to figure out really what that looks like. You know, is that seizures? Is that communication? Is that fine motor skills? Like what, on a day-to-day basis, what has the most significant impact? Because these are things that potentially FDA could target. So even if it's, again, not a complete cure, perhaps they could help guide a product or medication through the trial process that impacts something significant to the community. They want to know what important activities that you can't do anymore, maybe that you used to be able to and you can't, or maybe that you've never been able to and you want to. What's a good day in your life? What's a bad day? Everybody's good day and bad day may be different. Somebody's best day might be somebody's worst day. They want to know from the community. They want to know how your symptoms maybe have changed over time. Are they getting better? Are they getting worse? Are you stable? Impacting different areas. They want to know if your condition is well managed today. Right now, do you feel like things are under control with the current medications or treatment plans, or is there an unmet need? And then of course, what worries you the most about your condition or your child's condition? What does the future hold that is concerning to you, and how can they help? Questions for the afternoon session. They want to hear more about your current approaches to treatment and also what future treatment might look like. So what are you currently doing to treat your condition? And it doesn't have to be medication. It could be, physical therapy or horse therapy or anything. Like, what are you doing? How has your treatment changed over time, and why? Why did it change? Did it stop working? Did something new come out? What changed? How well does your current treatment regimen treat your significant symptoms? Is it working? What are the most significant downsides or side effects? What would you look for in an ideal treatment? And then what would you look for in a not perfect, but good enough treatment? They need to know all of this. And what does meaningful improvement mean to you? I'll give an example of meaningful improvement that FDA may not know. If a treatment could improve somebody's fine motor skills by this much, but that is just enough that they can hold their own spoon, and it's just enough that they can feed themselves. That could be really meaningful. That's independence for the person. That's reduced care needs, perhaps for the parents or caregivers. That might feel meaningful, even though it just looks like a little, oh, it's only 10%, but that 10% might be really important. Or if there's something that's preventing you from leaving the house, if your child frequently vomits and a medication could get that under control or not have that as a side effect, that could be really meaningful to your family. Maybe that means you can engage outside the home more, or have more opportunities for fulfilling enjoyment. So those are the questions that they want to hear. We've put together some tips for participation. So things to think about if you're speaking. You're going to be very specific. You're going to share detailed examples like I just shared about the 10% fine motor skill. Like that's really important. So just saying like, oh, it'd be nice if we could improve fine motor. Okay, why? Oh, now we understand. So that's really important to be specific and give those examples. Focus really on what the FDA can manage, right? We all have huge stories and there's lots of things that they can't help with. So we really want to focus on what they're asking so that we can make sure that we're really using our FDA partners' time as efficiently as possible so that they can understand what they need to do to make meaningful change for the community. When you're sharing your treatment experience, include what worked well, but also include what didn't work well or what's missing. Future outlook, think about like what you would really look for in an ideal treatment or what you would want in a clinical trial. So for example, would you want if you enroll your child in a clinical trial, would you want the site where you have to go most often to be the closest to your home? Or would you want it to be the place that's most specialized in your child's condition or in the technique that's being used? Those are both reasonable options. You could say, I'd love to go to this center of excellence, but I can't get there, so I would be willing to do it closer. Or I don't want anybody looking at my child who hasn't treated lots of other kids that look just like them, and I want to go to a specialty center. That's really important for clinical trial design, and FDA needs to hear that. Um, Other tips for participation is preparing in advance. This is something that we're going to be working with the community on lots at the conference and over Zoom and lots before the meeting to help you provide your story in a way that covers what's most important to you, but keeps it really time limited because unfortunately it's only just a few moments at the mic. So we want to really help you make sure you can tell your story as succinctly and meaningfully as possible. Questions about anything we've talked about before? I see there's a bunch popping up in the chat, but I can't see it. So please let me know if there's anything that I need to be addressing.
We're just chatty.
Yay! I love Chatty. That Chatty is engaged, so I appreciate you. Thank you. Okay.
Do you want
So
me to
after,
read them to you, Melody?
sure, if there's something that would be helpful, I would love to hear them.
So I have questions about the condition questions. Since many of our kids have multiple significant conditions like epilepsy, autism, intellectual disability, lack of speech, how do you navigate and prioritize what to focus on?
Such a great question. And I think that is what we're focusing on. I think that's one of the things that we're telling FDA is that these kids are complex. And forgive me for saying kids. I know that some of them are adults and I don't, our community, it's very complex and it's not just seizures. It's not just autism. It's not just this or that, that sometimes clinical trials tend to focus on just one endpoint or one easy to measure aspect of a condition. And so I think that our goal is to share it all. In the moment where they say like, what's most impactful, that's really hard. Like if you say you could just change one thing or like, what's the most important thing? And so when we do the polling that helps people narrow down, like, what are your top 3 areas that are most impactful? We're going to try to be broad. So we're not going to say like, you know, one little example, we may have a whole category of like communication or mobility to try to really capture the broad sense of what's going on in families. And then for those who are actually speaking, you will tell the whole story. If you're one of the panelists, you will tell the complete picture of what your day is like and what your symptoms are. You don't have to narrow it down to just 1 or 2. You can tell everything. Other questions or thoughts on what we've chatted about so far?
Hi, my name is Alexandra from Argentina. I have a question.
Yes, please.
My son Thomas is a loss of function and 20 years old. And in this group of patients, it's more difficult measure the functional because it's, for example, he hasn't got seizure, he hasn't got, I don't know, movement disorder, for example. But he has a restriction functional very several. So how we measure this kind of patient and when they evaluating risk and benefits of a treatment, for example, or including in a trial or in because this group of patients are like in the middle in the line for evaluating these benefits and risks and these things.
Yes, that's a brilliant question, and I'm so glad you brought it up. We are going to make sure that every group, as we mentioned, whether it's gain of function, loss of function, mixed function, however it's presenting, everybody will be represented as at least each group will have at least one speaker that represents them so that they hear the whole story. And then also one of the messages that we're really trying to make sure FDA understands is that there is this wide spectrum of effects and variant effects, and we want to make sure that they don't clump anybody with an SCN2A pathogenic variant into the same clinical trial, and that they're really focusing on making sure that the participants that are being treated and also that are being evaluated are similar enough that you can actually measure meaningful change and that you're not comparing groups incorrectly and potentially showing change or not change that's not real. And so it's just really important for FDA to understand what it looks like. And our researchers and scientists, when they get that chance to speak early on and explain to FDA what it looks like, they're going to really hone in on the different types, the different phenotypes, and make sure that FDA understands that it looks different to different people, and to help design clinical trials and treatment options that benefit each group, and but also separate each group when it's appropriate so that they're not mixing up and muddying up the waters, if you will, of the clinical trial. Thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate it. Anybody else? Okay. So we already shared the slide on the open comments for prep. I just wanted to put it back in again to show that, oh, sorry. We're going to do it again after the meeting. So that open comment period, 30 days after the meeting, you still can share your voice. After that, we'll start compiling all the information for the report, but it will count. And so again, if you forget anything or you don't have enough time, or 30 people raise their hand and we can only call on 5 of them, your voice will still be captured even if you don't get to say the words out loud at the meeting. And then the voice of the patient report, which I keep referencing. At the end of the day, we're going to create a significant document, usually upwards of 100 pages. And it is going to be the reference document for the FDA, and also for drug developers and other regulatory agencies all around the world. They can use our report as well. It will live on our website and it will live on the FDA's website. It will be the guide to SCN2A related disorders for people who are evaluating drugs or products that could potentially impact this community. And it really summarizes what the community has shared. It really highlights the patient perspective. It highlights unmet needs, and it really will make a difference. The FDA will use this report to help inform their benefit risk assessments and other guidance to drug developers and for when they're reviewing. So it really is important, and it becomes this public document that lives on. We also will be recording the meeting, and the recording will live on as well. So anybody who was unable to attend or wasn't part of the community at the time can go back and hear the powerful in-person testimony that was recorded. And we'll do our best to make sure that we capture the weight of that into the report as well. So some questions, some frequently asked questions. Do you need to be a medical expert to participate? Absolutely not. No expertise is required at all. Ideally you would feel comfortable speaking if you sign up for a speaker role. If you are not comfortable speaking, there's other ways to contribute, so everybody counts. FDA wants to hear about your experience, so please know that you are the experts. There's no degree that anybody could get from any college or university that could in any way compare to the lived experience, knowledge, and expertise that patients and caregivers have. So please know that your role here as an expert is so valued, and you do not need any other expertise. Is your contribution confidential? For this meeting, no. Well, let me say yes and no. So the public meetings are recorded and transcribed. So you determine how much you want to share publicly. What is private or confidential is what you share in the open comment period. And when you're doing the polling, that's all confidential. The only thing that's not confidential is what you choose to put out there into the universe if you choose to speak at the meeting. So that's entirely up to you how much you choose to share. If you can't stay for the entire meeting, you're welcome to join for any portion. We know it's a long day. We know that time zones will not maybe allow you to stay the whole time. You can come and go anytime that you want for the virtual meeting. If you're in person, of course you could get up and leave. We're going to have rooms for childcare. We're going to have sensory rooms. We're going to have chill out rooms. It's going to be very emotional. We'll have lots of tissues, and there'll be places to go to be calm if you need to regroup after hearing some testimony. If you know that you can only attend just a little bit of the meeting, we would ask that you hold your in-person registration until the very end to make sure that we have enough seats for people who can attend in person for the whole meeting. But other than that, yes, you're welcome to come and go. And then all of the official meeting materials will be on our website, scn2a.org, and will also be on the FDA's website. There'll be a link back to us. And we'll be on YouTube. We'll have lots of places where you can access it. All right. got another poll for you. It's been a minute since we've asked you. Bust out your phones. We would love some feedback. After this meeting, can you answer that now you understand why we're hosting? And was this town hall helpful, or how helpful was it for you to prepare and understand? How comfortable are you using Mentimeter? That's the communication tool that we're going to be using in the meeting. So we want to make sure everybody's comfortable. And if you're not, we'll host another session to make sure everybody's got it. We're also going to try to roll it out in more town hall meetings and potentially at the conference. And did you think that Mentimeter helped enhance the experience of this meeting? Was it helpful to see the live polling? Was it helpful to be asked different ways to share your input? So we really appreciate your feedback. I'll leave this open for just a moment while we open up the floor for questions. So go ahead and answer on this form, but also please come off mute or put into the chat any questions or feedback or thoughts that you have. We'd be very happy to answer them.
A question, Melody.
Yes, please.
I sort of know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Yeah.
How much does the FDA actually engage with the families and the foundation at the meeting?
That's an excellent question. So during the speaking portion of the meeting, FDA is in what they call listening mode. They do not speak, they do not answer questions. They are just absorbing and listening and taking notes. And again, most of the FDA participants will be virtual. We will have some in person. They're just soaking it all in. They're absorbing it and they're trying to process it. The ones who are physically at the meeting, they will engage. They're going to say hello. They're going to sit and have lunch with you. They're going to, they're going to be in the room and experience time with you, and they're going to be available potentially, hopefully, to answer some of your questions if you have any. Again, they're their official capacity in listening mode, but I'm sure that they can ask you, answer questions about basic things related to the FDA and certainly public comments. So.
That's helpful. Thank you. And maybe we could prepare like good questions to ask the FDA and maybe questions to avoid, or conversations to avoid maybe. Like they probably don't want to hear everything about my son's bowel movements, maybe. I don't know, but like I would love to hone in on exactly what would be the most useful.
I love that. And I'm thinking about some conversation starters. I don't know if any of you have done social skills. I've done social skills classes with my children, and we have little conversation starters of like, if you don't know what to say, just like, here, pull out this card and ask this. And so I'm thinking that might be a really nice thing that we could give families, like a little cheat sheet of conversation starters if you have a chance to say hi to FDA, or other regulators or clinicians or whoever you're talking to. Like what would you like to know, and what would they like to know? That would be really helpful. It's a great idea. Jenny, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like you said, that list should also include things, don't bother to ask them. They're not going to get into conversations about, how much the drug costs and what my Medicaid's going to cover and things like that.
That's a really
Yeah.
great point. And it's so interesting. This is what I love about FDA is they are so independent from that. Like when they're approving a treatment, they're basing it on safety and efficacy. Is it safe enough and does it work well enough? That's their criteria. They're not considering like, is this going to be a $4 million treatment? Is this going to be, is this something that Medicare or private insurance is going to cover, or is this going to be globally available? Like that's not what they're considering. And so we want to be really careful about what we share with them. But as I mentioned before, drug affordability and drug access is incredibly important. And we want to know what your concerns are, but we're going to take that conversation and we're going to bring it to the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, Medicare and Medicaid Services, or we're going to bring it to a group called ICER that helps, they're health economists that help set or help guide drug pricing. So like, is this drug worth $4 million? Well, if it's, a one and done gene therapy and dramatically changes the course of somebody's life, that's potentially worth $4 million to payers. Whereas if it just gives you 10% fine motor skills that might be important to families, but that might not justify a $4 million price tag. And so that information is really important. We want it. Other information that FDA doesn't want, but we really do, they can't help how long it took for your child to get diagnosed. They have no control over that whatsoever, but I want to know about it. I want to know if there's something we can do when we're doing our professional education for clinicians, like what red flags can we highlight for them, or what genetic testing can we advocate for? What can we do to shorten that diagnostic odyssey for your family? But FDA can't help with that, and they can't help if your insurance didn't pay for something. They can't help if you don't like your doctor. They can't help if it takes 6 months to get an appointment at CHOP. Like they don't, they can't help any of that. So we're gonna try to encourage you to still share those stories, but share them with us so we can advocate in the right places for that. Other questions, other feedback. Let me go to our thank you slide. I love this. We're going to be trying to highlight as many beautiful faces as possible. So another way that potentially you could participate is just share a photograph, and we'll have photos up everywhere, or we'll have rotating slideshows. Like, so many different ways to participate, so many different ways for you or your loved one to be included in this meeting. So I just want to stay connected, and very specifically to book a meeting with me. I want to put this one up first if you'd like to share a meeting. And I wanted to highlight, if you go to my meeting booking page, which is calendly.com/SCN2A-advocacy, I have 3 different meeting times that you can book. So if you just want to ask me a quick question, feel free to take a 30-minute slot or a 60-minute slot. But I specifically have an SCN2A family spot, and it actually blocks 2 full hours on my calendar. And you don't have to take those 2 hours. But what it does is it gives us both flexibility to take the conversation wherever it goes. So if you book it, a month in advance, and you picked 11 a.m., you don't know a month in advance what your 11 a.m. looks like. So if you need to join at 11:15 or 11:30 or 11:45 or whatever, it's holding your time for you so you can come and allow your life to play out as it does. Or if you need to leave early, it just gives you that wiggle room. I always have plenty of work to do, so I'm happy to hold the time on my calendar. And then it also gives you the time to just talk to me. Tell me everything you want to know, and I will put them in the buckets. I'll say, that comment that you just said is going in our next conversation when we go to, Capitol Hill. And that thing you just told me, that's going to this organization that's advocating for what you're asking for. And I'm just going to collect it all. So you are not obligated in any way to talk to me for 2 hours, but just know that it gives you the flexibility to not be rushed and to not feel like you have to be there right on time. And then let me go backwards to the other Stay Connected. Lots of other ways to find us on website and Facebook and YouTube and email. And then, of course, on our website, all the details of the PFDD meeting will be publicly posted. All right, I think we're actually a little bit over. I apologize, but it was great conversation, and I hope that that we've answered your questions. And I'll stay on the line as long as you'd like if there's anything else anybody wants to ask me. And if you don't want to ask publicly, that's fine, because as you know, this meeting is recorded. If you want to ask me privately, you know how to reach me now. I'll put that one back up. Well, thank you all so much for joining. I appreciate your time and all of the hard work. And William, thank you so much for making Mentimeter run so smoothly. I promise you I could not have done it nearly as well as you did. So I'm so grateful for your tenacity in solving that, all the challenges that came with this new technology. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Let's stop recording.